Well, good evening. Good evening. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. And before I say anything else, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for all of what you all do. And I want to say thank you for what the Washington Policy Center does. I want to say thank you not just for what the center does, but for the way it says it. For leading with research and data and facts and substance and solutions. And I think it's especially appropriate and important that we think about that for a moment. A moment on a day that is the 24th anniversary of the day that witnessed the worst terrorist attack in the history of our country. And a day that follows by a day another act of political terror, an assassination of a man whose sole offense was not an offense at all, but standing up for a point of view that he held passionately and engaging in the type of speech that is protected by our Constitution. I believe we are at a point of time where we not only have to stand together to abhor that kind of action, but show the country that there is a better way to engage in political discourse, and it is the way that you all engage and this center advances. Thank you. Now, I think I was probably invited to be here this evening because I ended up engaging in a lot more local political discourse than I ordinarily do this year in Olympia. I made more trips to Olympia this year than I ordinarily make to Olympia. I use my voice and we use Microsoft's voice to express our concerns about the myriad of tax proposals. The good news is we defeated a wealth tax and the payroll tax, and that's the end of the good news. The bad news is what you know it to be. This was a year where the legislature was not content to enact the largest tax increase in the state's history, but to enact the second largest one at the same time. To tax the operations of being in business in this state, to tax the sales of providing services to other businesses, to tax gasoline, to tax capital gains, basically, fundamentally, to tax every aspect of living in Washington state, but that was not enough. They taxed dying here as well. And the real shame of it all, in my opinion, is that the worst tax they enacted is not one that fundamentally affects Microsoft. It's what is called the estate tax, but what, among other things, is really the family business tax. As you all know, you can't have a sustainable business over more than some years and a single generation with the kind of tax that was enacted this year. And as anybody who's been in business knows, you actually have to pay attention to the price that you're charging and compare it to your competitors. And we're talking about competing with 49 other states. And with the exception of all but two, estate taxes are, as probably you know it, typically between about 5 and 16%, except for Hawaii, which has wonderful weather and beaches, and a 20% tax. And yet our legislature plowed through all of that with a 35% tax. Look, if you're going to charge a higher price, you better offer a better product. I love living here, but that takes a little bit of hubris. We need to think again. And the other challenge, one that we sought to voice this year, is in some ways worse than the rising taxes, is the results that we're seeing. As the Washington Policy Center documented in February, we've increased taxes and revenue for education in this state at a rate that far exceeds inflation over the last 12 years, but results have gone down, not up. And what's true for education is unfortunately true for too many other areas as well. Now, I would argue that most of the time, whether you're in business or whether you're in anything, if you keep putting more resources into something, but the results keep going down, you need to step back. It probably means you either need better leadership or a different strategy or better execution, or maybe all three. But you just don't keep doing what you're doing and put more money in it, but that in fact, is where we're going as a state. It's a problem. And I don't think I've told you anything you didn't know before you came for dinner. But let me share what I feel I have learned in my years, now more than 3 decades at Microsoft. Because I've had to lead the parts of this company that have been on point to navigate a challenging world. We've been on the defensive, basically playing away games around the world with governments and countries, that wanted to regulate us or tax us or break us up. And we've had to do that time after time and year after year. But as many of you know, because I know many of you own our stock, we've managed through that. I have to admit, we often have employed a similar approach. Understand the facts, understand the data, have solutions to offer. But one of the things I found along the way is that when you do all of that, you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and you feel good about yourself. You know in your heart that you are right. But if you spend all day losing, you don't actually sleep any better at night. So what did we learn that might speak to some of us, all of us, and what we need to do together? Well, one of the things I've learned is if you're standing on a beach and facing a hurricane, shouting at the wind and holding your hand up will not stop the storm from coming in. You got to meet people where they are. We have to meet voters where they are. We have to find ways to reach and persuade people that might be part of a coalition with us, even though they might think a little bit differently. That is what one needs to do. You see the wave coming in and you have to ride it. You have to get on a surfboard and take people with you and then in a different direction to a new solution that they might get excited about. And what is interesting, I find over the years, is that we need to understand the solutions, but unless you're an expert, solutions can often be confusing. Not because people aren't smart, but just because they don't have the time to learn everything that we might hope they would. But I have found this time and time again about people everywhere. They understand whether you care about what they care about, whether their problems are problems we want to address. And I think what's important to recognize is we can meet the voters of this state where they are because we do care and you do care about what they care about. The people of this state want to be able to buy or rent an affordable home. They want to send their kids to a better school. They want to go out on safer streets. They want to get in their car or a bus or a train and have it go faster and not be stuck in traffic. What they want is what everyone wants. And what we have to do is show that we care about them and their concerns. And then we have to build on that common concern and show that there are better ways. And this center understands what those better ways are. Certainly we as a company have invested more in affordable housing, $750 million. We have preserved and built more affordable houses, 12,000 units, than any company has ever built here. And we've learned, like you all have learned, that ultimately we need to harness the power of the market. If we want housing to be more affordable, we need more houses, and that means it needs to be easier for developers to build. We need to address the zoning and permitting. But ultimately, it's about finding common ground in a broader coalition to address the issues that are on people's minds. And in many ways, I go down time and time again to Olympia, and I often find that I meet with folks that haven't learned that their proposals have been enacted elsewhere and failed, or they're not willing to consider not just the possibility, but now the reality that the taxes they're enacting are driving people and jobs away. And we have to help people understand whether it's housing or education or transportation or safety, it all rests on a common foundation. It's the economy. And if there's one frustration among others that I have in this state, it's that the governor of New Jersey has asked me over the last 12 years to do more to advance economic development in New Jersey than any governor of Washington has. Economic development isn't part of the agenda. But anyone who cares about anything in this state needs to appreciate that it's the foundation for everything we might do. But I'll just say, there's one thing that in some ways gives me the greatest hope. We live in a country that often has discourse that talks about American exceptionalism. It tends oftentimes to grate on people outside the United States. It's like a husky bragging to a cougar, or vice versa. But what I've also found as I spend so much time traveling the world is that we often don't realize what truly makes America unique. America, more than any country I have found, is strong because it's a three-legged stool. The private sector, the public sector, and the nonprofit sector. We have a private sector that is the envy of the world. It's known, rightly so, for experimenting more, for investing more, sometimes for failing more, but out of those failures, innovating and growing more. And for more than 200 years, it has propelled this country to where it is today. But I think it's also important to recognize we wouldn't have the private sector we do today without the Constitution that we have, without the fundamental freedoms guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, without the rule of law that has been the source of stability, without a government that has checks and balances that has enabled us to constrain government, but also connect with the business community when we do our best work. And the one thing that you find in this country that you will not find anywhere else in the world is an unbelievably robust, diverse, broad group of nonprofits as well. It's extraordinary. We know it at Microsoft. This decade, we'll donate almost $1 billion in this state alone to match the almost $1 billion that our employees will donate as they did last year. Some are new and small, others are private institutions, some are basically public, like the crown jewel that we have in Puget Sound called the University of Washington. But what I think is worth reflecting on is this nonprofit sector is not new. It did not come out of nowhere. If you really want to understand it, just find the sections that Alexis de Tocqueville wrote in 1835 in his magnificently titled book, Democracy in America. And what he found when he traveled the young United States was at the frontier, where towns were new. If people needed a new building for a school, as he said, there was no king, you couldn't turn to the crown. People came together, they built it themselves. If they needed a new hospital, they came together and they funded it. That has always defined a substantial part of American entrepreneurialism. It spans every part of our country. But the other thing I found is this. We have this leg of the stool that's the private sector. We have the public sector. We have the nonprofit sector. We do our best work when we work together, and we spend most of our time politically arguing among each leg, especially between the private and public sectors. We all need to be healthy. Right now, the biggest problem in this state, in my view, is the public sector is on a path that is starving the private sector in order to grow the government. But of course, that doesn't mean that you all or any of us are hoping to starve the government. What we need is the right balance. And that's how we build the coalition that will take us forward. We have the right message. You have the right message. But we're losing, we're not winning. And the only way that we're going to succeed is not just to double down on all the values that we hold dear, but to connect with the people of this state, build the coalition we need, elect the leaders that are required in Olympia, be a business community that uses its voice, and by gosh, by golly, we at Microsoft will help you do that. It will take a long time. It won't be done tomorrow, but that's the right path. We can succeed. We have to succeed to keep this state special. Thank you very much.